I think it's our responsibility as Missoulians. We smile at each other. Somebody needs help. There's help there. We treat people in the way that we want to see people treat other people.
Get to know the history of the place and roll up your sleeves and get involved. There's no time for wringing your hands and complaining. It's time to work together and give each other the benefit of the doubt. Show some love to one another.
And we need to think constructively about saving some space so that we can grow some of our own local food and we can still have beautiful vistas that are unobstructed by high-rise buildings so that we can look at these beautiful mountains, that we have a river that we can fish in, we can recreate in, we can go to Brennan's Wave and watch those talented athletes. Those things are, I think, what will carry this community into the future more so than building more infrastructure, because it really is the land that brought people here in the first place.
Welcome to The Trail Less Traveled, an adventure radio series and podcast dedicated to collecting stories and sounds from around the world in order to take you back to mankind's earliest form of entertainment, storytelling. Missoula, Montana is a mecca for outdoor enthusiasts, and each week we will bring you tales of adventure from both near and far, as well as information and inspiration and a few tunes to set the mood. You can subscribe to the podcast and learn about our international outreach projects at traillesstraveled.net. And now, here's your host, International Expedition Guide, Conservationist, and Yogi, Mandela.
Today, The Trail Less Traveled is being recorded inside of a Land Cruiser, a really groovy patina Land Cruiser. It's parked behind Betty's Divine in the Hip Strip, Missoula, Montana. And I'm sitting here with Aimee McQuilkin. Aimee is the owner of both Betty's Divine and the Clark Fork Yacht Club. And I just want to first and foremost say, gosh, after all these years, I think it's been 18 years since I first met you, at least. I'm so stoked to be here in your vehicle with you, finally recording an interview.
Oh, feelings are mutual, Mandela. This is great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about the recording studio that we're sitting in today.
Well, her name is the Old Bee. She's a 1982 root beer brown Toyota Land Cruiser. More like a family sedan than an SUV in my mind, but actually driving a cabin is a better way to describe her. Really comfortable, really good views, just nostalgic and cozy. Smells a little bit like gas and old men. And, vintage clothing is one of my many passions in life, and I take it quite seriously, and it spills over into my vehicle choices. And my marriage dissolved, it's been like 7 years now. And I had a list of things I had to do when I was on my own. And one of them was get my own vehicle. And this is the one I got.
It's absolutely fabulous. Oh, so when you're not driving this beautiful cabin, what else you drive out of curiosity?
Well, this is my winter car, my gravel road vehicle, we'll say. In the summertime, I drive a 1983 convertible Rabbit. Not a cabriolet, as most people think. She's a Rabbit, a first-gen Wolfsburger edition. See, my dad was a car guy, is a car guy, and the way that we would bond was over cars, and I'm definitely evolving into a car guy as well. Only driving 80s vehicles. She's so fun. She's my road warrior. We go so fast. She's a race car. Excellent sound system. Also very good at hauling vintage clothing. You just put down the roof and you can just pile her so high.
Aimee, I want to learn more about your journey to Missoula and why you love this place so much. Tell us about that.
So I moved here in the 90s to go to the University of Montana. When I was a kid, we would come out here for family reunions in the Bitterroot. And the last time, I think I was a junior in high school, and we were hanging out in the Bitterroot Valley till 11 o'clock, and it was still kind of light out, and that stuck to me. I was a great student, valedictorian, could have gone so many places, but I was like, I'm going to go to that place. And that's why I chose the University of Montana. And I studied psychology and women's studies, which running a clothing store I use every single day. And when I got done, I didn't want to leave. I did not want to leave Missoula. And I had worked in a clothing store through college. I had grown up as my mom managed clothing stores, kids' clothing stores, ski shops. So I was always kind of around that shop environment. But really, it was my grandparents that I thank for my love of clothing and textiles, because my grandma had this abundant dress-up collection. And my sister and I would just become different people just with clothing. And that is really my love of clothing. It's not really current trends though, of course, we pay attention to those. It's more like, who do I want to become? Who do I want to be? Who was I? And how can how I get dressed every day help me be that person? So yes, I opened Betty's Divine in 2005. I was actually pregnant with my second child, Macy. That was another reason, is it was so hard for me balancing schedules with our first baby and not seeing each other, it's so hard to be a working parent. And I didn't want to do that again. And I thought, if I can do this, and I'm an excellent multitasker, so I knew I could bring my child to work. And that was one of really the big catalysts. And people say like, oh, well, I want to do that before I have kids, or, when they're older. And no, I'm doing it alongside, a tiny baby who grew up walking in Betty's, and people would hold her while she was sleeping, and I would help their daughter try on shoes. Like, that's the way to do it. It helps you prioritize. It always helped me create balance too, because I would have to have balance because I had a family at home. So yeah, kids, family, being in Missoula.
As I sit here in the Land Cruiser, it's just a delicious treat for the eye. Over on my right, there's a groovy poster peeling off of a brick wall that says, "Namaste, bitches," with, of course, 3 ladies on motorcycles. And I'm sitting here with Aimee McQuilkin. She's the owner of Betty's Divine and the Clark Fork Yacht Club. So let's talk about the river and what you do at the yacht club.
Yes. Well, also, we should note that where we're sitting right now, we wouldn't be able to sit in July and August because this is the yacht club. And that's what I love about that business, is it was an idea that involved using space in a more like environmental and economical way. Basically, it's an all-in-one tubing shuttle so that people, whether they live here or they're visiting, could do the town flow of Missoula that you'd always see people doing for years, which is basically from East Missoula back into town through the Hellgate Canyon on the Clark Fork River. But, no one had done it yet because, you would have had to pay rent on a spot that was convenient for people to take out at, and for a business that was open 2 months out of the year. And it just was impossible unless you think outside of the confines that we'd always known. So I had seen a business similar. I had talked to so many people. I was like, this is what we need. And finally, I was like standing in the gravel parking lot behind my shop, which is in a building that I own. Thank you for community finance institution here in Missoula. And I thought, this is where it needs to be. So the yacht club is currently folded up, awaiting its erection at the end of June every year. And it's a really awesome business, one, because it's fun to do with my best friend. The crew is amazing. It's primarily women. We get to be around the river, helping people on and off of it and promoting good caretaking, good stewardship of the river, but also doing it in a way that doesn't involve going to the hardware store and buying a single-use giant slice of pizza to float down the river on. That's not meant for the river. It's going to pop. It's plastic. It's made in China. Instead, we get our tube covers. Our tubes are very elevated. You have a butt hammock. You have a pillow. You have pockets for all the things that you require on your float on the river. And they're made by a woman in Seattle. And they last 5 years. So many butts sit in those tubes. Famous people's butts sit in those tubes. Old ladies celebrating their 90th birthday sit in those tubes. Couples, people getting married. Sometimes people just after work who want to go float the river and hang out with their girlfriends or their coworkers and catch up and don't want to do it sitting in a typical scenario. They do it on the river. I love the shared aspect of it. Everything that we provide is rented, so it's not single use. I'm sure we could make so much more money if we were like, buy this phone cover, buy this dry bag. But we want to instill that idea, like we don't all need our own thing. And this is something that a lot of people just do once a year, once a lifetime when they're just visiting Missoula. So that is a very important part of Clark Fork Yacht Club.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Aimee, we're in the hip strip right now, and you were talking about the hip strip being a village where you can go into stores like Betty's Divine and you can meet the owner. You can meet Aimee. You can meet this fabulous woman. And so let's talk a little bit about community, hip strip, and how we can collectively work together to keep Missoula so special as more and more people move here.
This is such a great question. And the positivity and enthusiasm that I like to have around Missoula's change, because as we talked about earlier, change is what we know. Change is going to happen. And it's important not to fear it, but instead to look at the abundance that change can offer us and to get involved and shape it. To me, people that are moving here, when they encounter Missoulians, longtime Missoulians like you and I, Mandela, who treat them with respect, compassion, empathy, love, then we're going to receive that back. And so I just love being in a space where I encounter people, whether it's at the yacht club or inside Betty's, and you don't have to spend money to come into these places. You can, walk around, touch clothing, leave. You can buy things, whatever. But I love to be in a place where we treat people in the way that we want to see people treat other people. And so I think it's our responsibility as Missoulians, whether we own businesses, work in businesses, we're just walking our dogs on the trail, to treat people in the way that we want to see them act. And that is our responsibility. And you know what? I don't think we even have to remind each other of that, because that's what makes Missoula special, is we do that. We smile at each other. We look at each other in the eyes. We say hello. If somebody needs help, there's help there. And Missoula's community just blows my mind. And I like to think that we're unique, but then as I travel, I see it all over the place. And it brings me such hope. It's like the news that I hear that's saying we don't have that, I'm choosing not to believe that. I'm keeping my eyes on the fact that people are leading with their heart and opening businesses with their heart and taking care of their communities with their heart. And Missoula is just one of many. Yes. And, this town, I never want to leave this town. I moved here in 1995 and never wanted to live anywhere else. And I don't think I ever will, even as we go through changes. And I probably will open another business, who knows, or assist someone. I love talking to people and being very transparent. I mean, anyone who's listening, you have any questions, you want to open a business, let's talk. I love that, because this is stuff that should be shared. And the more that each of us individuals can take our magic and our skills and turn it into our livelihood. And so it's something that makes you happy to go to work every day. Like when I open the shop and I'm sweeping the front sidewalk, I just am smiling. There's mountains there. There's people walking by, saying hello. There's just such joy. And this makes me happy. This is what I do for work. I feel so fortunate. And the more that we can encourage people to do that, to find that, the better our community will be. And it is so, so important. And this is why I'm involved in land code and housing communities, is people like me. I didn't have money to open a business. I didn't go to business school, never even took a business class at the University of Montana. But I had enthusiasm and I had drive and I had an idea and I had experience. And what was key to receiving money from a financial institution was owning the home I lived in. And I would not have been able to open Betty's if I didn't have this asset that the bank could be like, well, if you fail, we'll take that, which, is a sad story. It unfortunately didn't happen. But we need to make it possible for people to own their homes, even if they're 700 square feet apartments. If they own them, they have stability. They care about where they live. They invest in their neighborhood. And then they're building equity. And then they can go to a bank and they can take their idea, no matter how big or small, and they can receive a loan because they own where they live. And it's so important to me that people can continue to have ownership and stability here in Missoula so that we can continue to see Betty's Divines or Black Coffees or Fact and Fiction bookstores or all the fun places, Bathing Beauties. I mean, Brasserie Port Rouge. I could go on and on and on. They're all just Missoulians who love Missoula and love doing what they do and need the opportunity to do it.
Oh, thought often where I'm just actually forgot what I was going to ask because I'm so fired up. And I agree with you entirely. I feel living in Missoula is a privilege, and with privilege comes responsibility. So we have to get educated and engaged and, look out for each other. So with that, I was going to ask you about this fabulous mythical creature that many of you listening who just moved here or who don't live here might not follow the next part. But if you know Missoula, then you know about the Mannequin. The Mannequin who now is in Betty's, but for a long time was in a men's clothing store. So can you close with the story behind the Mannequin, please?
Yes. So yes, you're right. I see people come in and they kind of glance at this like hot doll that oftentimes is wearing ungendered clothing who stands in the window looking out upon Higgins Avenue or Main Street. And he came to live at Betty's Divine in a very unusual way. So we call him Desmond because he lived in a store called Desmond's. That was a men's suit shop that was downtown Missoula for, I want to say 30-ish years. At a time in Missoula where men wore suits. I don't know about you, Mandela, but I don't see a lot of men wearing suits in Missoula anymore. And so sadly, as things evolve and change, Desmond's, no longer was serving the community and decided to close. And everyone was like, what is going to happen to the Mannequin that stands in the window? And all the people that don't wear suits knew about the Mannequin because whether you were walking in the daytime with your kids, you would stop and just laugh. His smile is infectious. You would be coming home from the bars at 2 a.m. laughing with your friends, and you would just be surprised by him looking at you suddenly and trying not to pee your pants. I mean, everyone knew about Desmond for years, and I don't even know what they called him. Actually, that could be an interesting poll or interesting thing to ask because we call him Desmond, but he probably has many, many names.
Sounds like a side investigative radio series.
Absolutely. So when Desmond's went up for sale, I went in and was like, what's going to happen to the Mannequin? And the guy who owned it was like, well, I'm actually accepting silent bids. And I won't tell you what the highest one is right now. Would you like to offer a bid? And I was like, yes, but also so stressed out. Like, is it enough? Is it too much? I don't know. And so I gave him $500. And I was like, that's all I could really justify for this. And then I put it out there in the world that I was doing this. And individuals, customers, friends, other business owners, the Roxy, the Zach, they all came forward and went in and added to my bid until I ended up with the biggest bid, and Desmond came to live with us today. And he came with his friend, Dancing Santa, who comes out once a year. And now I'm like suddenly this repository for like unwanted dolls and mannequins, because now I have another one that's a lamp that came from Pepper, which again, if you've lived in Missoula for a while, you know who I'm talking about. She's this elegant, beautiful woman. She's still alive. She's 95. She doesn't get around as much anymore. She doesn't live on the hip strip like she used to, but we called her the governor of the hip strip. She would just be sunning herself out front of Bernice's, walking down to the Holiday and getting a Coors Light. She would be in Flippers. She'd be everywhere, all over Missoula. And when Pepper moved from her apartment on the hip strip into assisted living, she left me a lamp that's also a mannequin in her will. But while she's still alive, she was like, I want this lamp to come live in Betty's. And when we go back inside, I'll show you the new doll that's also a lamp. And who's coming next? I don't know. But we've become a place where mannequins go to live their best lives.
That is the voice of Aimee McQuilkin, and we're sitting in her Land Cruiser just behind Betty's Divine on a beautiful day in Missoula. Aimee, thank you so much for your time, energy, and everything that you do for this community.
Thank you, Mandela. Right back at you.
So I didn't give you a heads up, but I was going to ask you to share a song. You don't need to sing it unless you want to. But what song comes to mind that reminds you of cruising down the road in this groovy Land Cruiser is somewhere near Missoula, but not necessarily in Missoula?
So I have now gotten with the times and I can hook up to, Bluetooth. But when I first bought the Land Cruiser, there was a CD player. And my daughters and I listened to one CD always in the Land Cruiser. And it's a local band that's no longer together called Butter. And sadly, like I probably still have the CD actually in this glove box, but it's so scratched. You can't listen, you can't hear it. But Ermina was the lead singer, Ermina and Lizena, and they sang the most beautiful, beautiful ballads. And my daughters and I would just cruise Forest Service roads, just belting out their songs. And so it's not a song, it's the whole album. If anyone has this copy of their only CD they probably ever made, they're not on Spotify, that isn't scratched, and they'd like to drop it off at Betty's Divine, I would be eternally grateful.
Paper cup, honey, where you been? I can't see where you live. Where you going now? Down that fat old road, shopping complexes, to your idea of love. Not someone else's. Paper cup, honey, where you been?
I'm standing at the 4 red X's by the train tracks in the rain with David Stromeyer. He is the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners and the chairman of Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. David, first and foremost, thank you so much for setting aside the time to join me in the rain here and share a little bit about where we are today and your connection to this place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invitation. Great to be here. We are in a place that has a long and storied history. The cultural landscape of this place where we are standing right now, even though it's heavily impacted by industry, we're next to the railroad tracks and the old train station here in downtown Missoula. But the cultural landscape of this place goes back to the receding waters of glacial Lake Missoula at the end of the last great ice age. We would have, at one point in time, over 10,000 years ago, been underwater here on the bed of the lake. But when the great ice jams broke downstream from here in the Clark Fork and Ponderay, watersheds, releasing floodwaters that inundated eastern Washington. Eventually, this turned into the dry land that we see today and was occupied by the ancestors of the Salish and Pend Oreille people, whose Aboriginal homelands these are. So I think it's always important to do a little bit of level setting to remember that history in this place did not begin in the 19th century with settlers or early in the 19th century with the Lewis and Clark expedition. The history here goes way, way back into deep time. And I think that's a good reminder for ourselves today of how can we learn from those who have stewarded this place for many, many generations. And these are people who are not just a relic of history. They're people who are with us today. This is still their lands. And how can we figure out how to coexist on this landscape with all the critters and all of the natural forces that I think are what make this crown of the continent region of North America so special.
And David, as you know, this is a radio show / podcast, and so the listener can't see where you're standing right now. I was wondering if you could just take a moment to paint the picture with words to describe where you are right now and also your personal connection to it.
Yes, so where we are right now, as I mentioned, we are next to the railroad tracks. And these railroad tracks bisecting downtown Missoula, Montana, came through here in 1883 with the Northern Pacific Railway's arrival. As I look to the north, I see grassy hills that in the spring would be alive with lupin and Indian paintbrush. And a little bit farther, just up the slope out of view here, would be the Rattlesnake Wilderness area, the closest wilderness area in the United States to a metropolitan area. And from there on north, it is almost unbroken wildlands, clear up to Glacier National Park and Waterton National Park in Canada. Scanning around to our west, we are looking down the Clark Fork River watershed. This is really the headwaters of the Columbia River system here in Montana. And scanning a little bit to the south, we have the Bitterroot Range and really the entry point into some of those grand wilderness areas in the state of Idaho. The Bitterroot Valley extends to our south. On the west side of the Bitterroot Valley are the Bitterroot Mountain Range. To the east side of the Bitterroot Valley is the Sapphire Range. And then extending a little bit to the west, here we have really the gateway to the Rocky Mountains, which will lead us right into the Continental Divide, which is the separation point between the waters that flow to the Columbia and the waters that flow to the Missouri and Mississippi.
David, do you remember your first time coming to Missoula?
I do. So many a moon ago, my wife and I were looking at a place to attend graduate school in the United States, and we'd hopped around attending various academic programs, and we got to the point in our lives where we wanted to find a place that would not simply be a transitory location where we would finish up an academic program and then move somewhere else. What might be a place that we could actually call home beyond that academic program? And Missoula was it. So I spent some time in the environmental studies program here at the University of Montana. We indeed did fall in love with Missoula and this unique mix of the culture and landscape of this place, which makes this have a sense of authenticity that you don't find well, sadly, you find that sense of authenticity ever less in communities around this nation. And so for the past 27 years now, we have called Missoula, Montana home.
Let's talk a little bit about Missoula for someone who has not yet been here in terms of your personal connection to the things that make this a community for you, not just a city, but a community.
So for me, and this goes to the cultural aspect of this place, part of having a vibrant republic and community and society, I believe, are the arts and culture. Oftentimes folks think of that as just kind of window dressing or extras. I feel that is at the heart of what it means to be a human being and to live in a community that's vibrant. So here in Missoula, we have the University of Montana. We have a long tradition of arts and culture being just weaved into the place, a long literary history of some literary giants being located here. And as a writer myself, I certainly was attracted to that when we first moved to Missoula. And so for me, that adds to the sense of authenticity. As I'm looking out here from where I'm standing, right next to this train station is a piece of public art with 4 large red crosses, X's, kind of evoking a sense of this being a crossing, if you will, not just for large transportation infrastructure like railroads, but a crossing point, a connection point for cultures, again, going back time immemorial to those native and indigenous peoples who this was also a crossing and a connection point.
Mm-hmm. David, is it okay if we talk about your connection to the land in terms of you're a hunter? You just told me you spent some time with your son harvesting local organic meat.
Yeah, so a couple connections to the landscape. In a former life, I worked as a wildland firefighter. Spent many years doing that and subsequently doing research and writing about that. And from a more philosophical standpoint, thinking about the role of fire in all of our lives and what cultural significance that has. In Western Montana, in fact, throughout the Western United States, live on landscapes that have hosted fire from time immemorial. As long as there has been lightning and cured tinder in this location, there has been fire. Native peoples also used fire as part of land management techniques. So fire is nothing new to this place. Figuring out how to live with fire, this powerful, symbolic, and very real natural phenomena, is something that we still wrestle with and is part of my connection to this place. Also, as you mentioned, I am a hunter. I'm a big game hunter. And for me, this is not... there's multiple facets to this. It's a way to provide healthy and really homegrown food for my family, but it's also a very spiritual and intimate engagement with the natural world. It's damn serious business to take a life in any context, and I feel that it's a gift of the land when I go out and have the opportunity to harvest an antelope or a deer or an elk or a grouse for that matter.
I just really appreciate how connected you are, not necessarily just with the city of Missoula and this community, but also the surrounding landscape. And so,
well, we are stewards of this place, and that's why in my role as a county commissioner here, I take very seriously, and I know my colleagues take very seriously what it means to embrace the term stewardship and to see ourselves as not just consumers or not just voters or not just taxpayers, but to really be a citizen of a place means to understand all of the connections, and that means natural connections to the place. It means how can we make sure that we leave this place better for future generations than how we found it, how we take seriously the opportunities to mitigate climate change. And certainly here in Western Montana, we are attuned to the effects of climate change and want to make sure that even though we are a small community on the global scene, there's things that we can do to play a leadership role in stewardship and demonstrating that.
David, let's talk a little bit about the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority and your work with them.
This is one of the most exciting projects that I've had the opportunity to participate in as long as I've been in public service. So up until 1979, we in Missoula, Montana had Amtrak service. What was known as the North Coast Hiawatha route connecting Chicago, Seattle, and the Pacific Northwest flowed right here through southern Montana and Missoula. In a period of federal government retrenchment during the Carter administration, this route was basically abandoned. But here we are in the year 2024, recognizing that passenger rail can play a vital role in the economies and the cultural richness and also in the environmental sustainability of not only those of us here in Montana, but across this entire corridor. So we are embarking on a pretty ambitious, and I would say probably one of, if not the most ambitious transportation projects in a generation. And that is to restore this corridor, to renew this corridor such that if you are in Seattle or Spokane or Portland, Oregon, or anywhere here in southern Montana, all the way to Chicago, you could commute by and travel by passenger rail. So many benefits to this, and we are really on the cusp of a rail renaissance here in the United States. And for me, just seeing the broad breadth of political and ideological diversity of those who are supporting this effort, I feel like in this era of extremely divisive rhetoric, we have actually stumbled upon something that can bring people together in a way that I've not seen other issues bring people together. And so a reminder for me that we, again, in the year 2024, can still embrace big, bold projects, even if they might initially seem out of reach. And let's not limit ourselves to kind of a withering, puny vision of the future.
David, what does a county commissioner do?
County commissioners here in the state of Montana and beyond the state of Montana typically wear a couple hats. So as opposed to the sorts of government layers and levels that most folks might be familiar with, like state or federal or even municipal governments with cities, where you have clear distinction between the executive and the legislative branches. We don't have that in county government. So me as a county commissioner, and we have 3 county commissioners here in Missoula County, Montana, as do most counties across the state of Montana. We are both the executive branch and the legislative branch of government rolled into one. So it's like being the mayor and the city council simultaneously, which is a little difficult to describe and even more difficult to actually pull off effectively. But I've got a great group of colleagues to work with. We handle county-wide issues ranging from transportation to parks and trails to delivering services such as public health services. It's just a whole mix of different sorts of involvement that we have on any daily basis. And for me, that means also looking out for transportation options, where this is one of the challenges that many folks have wrapping their minds around a really big, thorny transportation project like restoring passenger rail, is that you've got to work across jurisdictional lines rather than just being focused inwardly. And so whether it's climate change, whether it's transportation, we're looking for ways to collaborate with others to, at the end of the day, make all of our lives better moving into the future.
More and more people are moving to Missoula. How can we work collectively to keep this place special?
So what we've seen in the past few years, particularly during the pandemic and in the immediate aftermath, even up until today, following the COVID-19 pandemic, is the recognition on many people's part that if you have a computer and a good internet connection, you can work just about anywhere. And we've been found, we've been discovered. Some of that discovery dates back to the release of the movie A River Runs Through It, and folks recognizing that Montana has great trout streams, it has beautiful scenery, but during the pandemic, when folks could move from the coasts or any location for that matter and do their business here, that did bring an influx of folks to our community. I'm a transplant also. I came from somewhere else, fell in love with this community and this landscape, and have remained here for a few decades. What I would encourage folks to do is, if you're coming here from elsewhere, wanting to be involved, wanting to nurture this community, then truly make it your home. And making it your home means doing what you can to put down roots. If there's an opportunity to get involved in a volunteer organization or association, do so and get to know the place, get to know the history of the place. I doubt that enough folks recognize that this is the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. And just to our north is the Flathead Reservation of the Confederated and Salish and Kootenai tribes. Get to know the history of the place, breathe that in, and roll up your sleeves and get involved. There's no time for wringing your hands and complaining. It's time to do what we can to work together and give each other the benefit of the doubt. There's too little of that at times, and just show some love to one another.
That's the voice of David Stromeyer. He is the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners here in Missoula. He's also the chairman of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. David, thank you so much for your time and energy and everything that you do for this city.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
What song would you like to share right now that reminds you of Missoula, Montana?
Wow, this is a tough one. As I'm thinking about this, I'm looking out, seeing the flags fluttering, listening to some of the noise on the interstate roll by. I can't sing it, but I love the tune of the state song. I wish I was more vocally inclined to play that for you. Maybe you could find a snippet of that and weave it in. But the state song of Montana, it evokes a little bit of a sense of nostalgia and the grandeur of this place.
Tell me of that treasure state, story always new. Tell of its beauties grand and its heart so true. Mountains of sunset fire, the land I love the best. Let me grasp the hand of one from out the golden west. Montana, Montana, glory of the West. Of all the states from coast to coast, you're easily the best. Montana, Montana, where skies are always blue. Montana, Montana, I love you. Each country has its flower, each one plays a part. Each bloom brings a longing hope to some lonely heart. Bitter root to me is dear, growing in my land. Sing then that glorious air, the one I understand. Montana, Montana, glory of the West. Of all the states from coast to coast, you're easily the best. Montana, Montana, where skies are always blue. Montana, Montana, I love you.
Today, The Trail Less Traveled is being recorded in the heart of Missoula. We are currently surrounded by trees, and on the other side of the trees we have traffic because it is the location where we find Pink Grizzly Greenhouse. I'm sitting here with Shane Clouse, who's the owner of Pink Grizzly. And the reason I say we're surrounded by trees in particular is because we're approaching Christmas, and it's the time of year where people are coming in to get wreaths and Christmas trees. But Shane is also a singer and a songwriter with his band, Stomping Ground. So first and foremost, Shane, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and energy joining me on The Trail Less Traveled.
Pleasure. It's my pleasure, Mandela.
Tell us about this room where we're sitting right now and your connection to it for your family here in Missoula.
Well, we're sitting in the living room of the house that I grew up, which is on the location where Pink Grizzly is, in the now center of Missoula. My parents purchased this property in 1955, Ferris and Anna Marie Clouse. And at the time, they only had 3 children. But I am the youngest of their 8 children. So the room that we're sitting in is where all 10 of us, for a major portion of our life, lived here. We raised 4-H animals in our little 4-H farm in the middle of Missoula long before the greenhouse came to be. And the family operation of our little farm that at the beginning was for subsistence so that we could provide our own food led into us learning more about leadership and giving to the community And that led to us going to seek more education. And in my part, I came back to this place because we realized that my background in agriculture and my desire to teach people how to grow their own food could become a business. And that's basically how Pink Grizzly started. Is we had a need for subsistence to grow our own food, and then we had more than we needed, and we had folks in the community that wanted to buy it. And so we were able to start a business all the way back in 1956. My parents started doing that. And the actual name Pink Grizzly came in 1970. That's kind of a cute story. They had need of a building that would have a cold storage and a sort of a retail center, a roadside truck stand for the produce. At the time, money was tight because my parents had 8 kids and on a single teacher's salary. So once they finished the building, they didn't have a whole lot of money left over for paint. And there was a sale on pink paint. And my father bought that pink paint and painted the building this awful color of pink. And all the kids at the time wanted to name it Pink Panther. But back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was a famous British comedian, the Pink Panther, and they even had a, cartoon. So with the copyright and trademark of that name, because of the mascot, the University of Montana Grizzlies, it became Pink Grizzly in 1970, and then that name stuck. And once you know what the Pink Grizzly is in Missoula, it's hard to forget. It's such an eclectic kind of a little store in the middle of Missoula, a little piece of green in the middle of the blacktop jungle.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any of the stories that your parents shared about what this place was like before, it was surrounded by businesses and roads?
I do. So it wasn't all that long ago that Pink Grizzly was actually out of town. So the city did not annex out to Russell Street, which is our west-facing boundary, until 2000. Prior to that, the roads around us were actually still dirt roads, even in 2000. My father and mother, when they first moved here, there was no bridge across Russell Street. It was a 2-track dirt road, and he always talked about an enormous patch of asparagus that grew in the middle of Russell Street, and that's where they would go each spring to get their fresh asparagus. This area where we live is an old lumber mill district. Right across the street was the Intermountain Lumber Company. They made studs or 2x4s. And so the train would come not a block away from where we're sitting now and deliver lumber for them to mill. And then 4 blocks east of us, where the now baseball stadium is in the McCormick Park, adjacent to that was the Silver Lumber Mill. The Silver family had an enormous lumber mill there, and that's just now being developed into what's called the Old Sawmill District. So there's a lot of timber extraction history in the neighborhood where we're sitting, and almost kind of accidentally, our business, because it's been successful, has been able to keep this pretty open space and make enough money to keep it going.
Well, Shane, outside of running Pink Grizzly, you're also in a band. For those who maybe just moved to Missoula, or for the international audience, can you tell us a little bit about Stomping Ground?
Growing up in Missoula's always been a champion of the arts. So with MCT and with some excellent educators, they realized early on that I was really interested in music, and I was a pretty good singer, and then I learned how to play the guitar. I lived in Nashville for quite some time and learned how to be a singer-songwriter. I was aspiring to be an international country artist. And in about 2000, I would spend half the year in Nashville, half the year here. I came back and in 2002 started a band called Stomping Ground, and we intended to do it just as a CD release, but then we started getting asked to do gigs at the Union Club and at various bars around town and then various private functions. So out of that was over 20 years ago, I've recorded 6 CDs, and my band still plays. We do private functions, public functions, and corporate events. And I've also been able to kind of weave in my love of conservation. And so I use my musical talents to help multitude of conservation and philanthropic nonprofits, not just in Montana, but throughout the United States.
I mean, yeah, right when I walked into Pink Grizzly today, you were making a donation to a local nonprofit. So I think it's just really amazing that you walk the walk and you give back to this community that's given you so much.
Well, and there's lots of ways to get back. We can't always give $1,000 to every charity, but we can give them a Christmas tree, because I have a lot of those. I like to say, instead of giving a person the shirt off your back, why don't you give them some material and teach them how to make a shirt? Because then they'll be able to make a shirt for the rest of their life, and they could teach somebody else. So we try to give things that instill more community into people. So one of the things that we try to do is spread joy. And a Christmas tree can bring a little bit of joy to people. Or in the springtime when we are selling starter plants. People can buy a tomato plant or some sweet corn or some seeds, and I could teach them how to grow a garden that they can have a great amount of joy working that with their family and then reap the benefits of it. A lot of holistic things that we've been able to build into the eclectic many facets of my life that is not totally uncommon in Missoula. There's a lot of people that have that and embody that.
Mm-hmm. Part of the reason I love this community, this is a big subject shift, but from music to irrigation. You know a lot about irrigation in Missoula and in this area in particular. So can you tell us a little bit about your connection there?
I can. Obviously, there's the old adage, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. And it's more and more important the whole world over. Our forefathers that settled the western United States realized back then how important it was because they didn't have modern methods of delivering irrigation water to the crops where they were needed. The Missoula Irrigation District is very unique. It was set down by a court decree. It was set down as the Hellgate Ditch back in about 1860. But the court decree had the forward thought to realize that this community was going to grow massively. They didn't know when it would happen, but they knew it would happen. And because of that, they set up that irrigation ditch that starts where the Bark Park is at the University of Montana, where people tailgate, and it goes all the way through our community, roughly following 5th Street and 3rd Street, and it goes all the way out to Miller Creek, and then it dumps back into the Bitterroot River, and essentially recycles. That water feeds over 4,800 households, so that's probably more than 10,000 people that it actually directly impacts that use the water, whether it be for their home garden, their yard, their hay for their cattle or horses, or their farmer's market garden. And because it has always been here, people don't always realize what it is and that this massive riparian area flows through our entire community from the outside of town on the east end of town to the outside of town on the west end of town. And that water is the lifeblood that provides us water for irrigation. It did become very important this year when we had the wind event. The entire community lost power for 3 days, in some places more than a week. Anybody that was close to that ditch was able to go get a bucket full of water to fill their toilet. If you want to see how important water is, just don't be able to use your bathroom for a few hours. So that did put a positive light on how readily available that water is to our community. And that even though Missoula is much more built up than, say, Garfield County in eastern Montana, the fact that we have that water available to our community in perpetuity is a gift that there can be no limit to the value placed on how much that water means to our community. And not just for food, but for recreation, for the fish that we want to fish for, and just for our heritage as well. But a lot of the reason why people live here is because it's beautiful. Well, it wouldn't be as beautiful if we didn't have that water.
Now, Shane, you referenced the wind event, and I think everybody listening will remember the wind event that happened both here in Missoula and in the Bitterroot Valley. It was really neat that Missoula came together to help to remove trees.
It was impressive. The wind event we had here, and I've heard several statistics, but it was the equivalent of millions of board feet and millions of tons of tree branches that fell down. Not only did the community of Missoula have an open up space that the county owns or the city owns and a place to put it, in our situation, we had 4 trees that were almost 80 feet tall and 100 years old go down and literally cover 3/4 of our property. And people just showed up to help us start cutting it up. And then when we got ours cleaned up, we started helping other people. So I heard multitude of stories of neighbors helping neighbors, and the community came together to clean it up. And of course, the government institutions did that as well. But I like to think that the community nature of Missoula and just the independent, nobody else is going to do this for me mentality, people came out of the woodwork and helped each other clean it up in a relatively short amount of time. And I think that speaks a lot to our community. There's been several natural events that have been devastating around the country, but I was pretty impressed that Missoula was pretty much able to take care of most of that problem by itself. Mm-hmm. It speaks to the strength of our community.
Much of conservation funding comes from hunting and fishing licenses and excise taxes. Unfortunately, less and less people are harvesting from their backyard. And so you are not only connected to this community, you're also connected to the land because you fish and you hunt. I'm wondering if you could lean into that about why that is important to you, why you do it, and why you think it's also maybe something someone listening at home might want to consider leaning into.
I think a lot of people don't consider that the act of hunting and fishing and buying a license or buying a weapon, which is the tax dollars are funded by the Pittman and Robertson Act, that money goes back to conservation. So the act of consumptively using the resource in the way that the North American model of wildlife conservation was set up, that the resource has value. So we have to buy a license to be able to go harvest or to go fish. And that money that you pay for the license goes back into the conservation. So my fear, as we get less and less people utilizing the resource, an unutilized resource quickly gets forgotten. So one of the things that I do, and you'll hear about the song Montana Matters, I reach out to a lot of youth because I don't have children, but I'd like to leave a legacy. And that legacy is to try to maintain our wild places for the future. And utilizing the resource and even consuming the resource in a sustainable way is extremely important. Because if we leave it up to nature, our nature is to build up and cover things with blacktop and houses and developments. There's a way that we can do that have been successful with in other parts of the world, that we can save wild places and farm ground, and we can still have more places for people to live, but we need to think many, many years in the future about sustaining the wildlife and the wild places that we have now, because it can quickly go away. And utilizing that resource and even being consumptive of it, hunting and fishing or even trapping, and doing that in a sustainable way is very important to make sure that in 100 years from now, we can still go out and hunt a deer if we choose, and we can use that to feed our family, or we can still go fishing. So we need to continue to teach our youth to use those things in a constructive manner.
That is the voice of Shane Clouse. He is the owner of the Pink Grizzly, which has been around since 1955.
Yes, it has.
And we're here at his home, where his dad built the fireplace that's sitting right behind me. And I'm sitting at one of the tables that his family sat at for times like what's coming up here, gathering together to be grateful for the land and the animals and family and connection in this community. So I wanted to end by talking about the amount of new people who are moving to Missoula and ways in which you think we can work collectively to take care of this place, this resource.
Well, the last topic we spoke about, I do think it's important that new people that come here get to learn about our traditions, where if we live in Washington, D.C., maybe hunting and fishing is just not on their top of mind awareness, that it's actually can be thought of and utilized as a conservation tool. So the new people that move here, and I'm not sure how we accomplish this, but to teach people that this is the way our culture is, and we've done a really good job at maintaining a balance between development and the nature that people move here for. And we need to think constructively about saving some space so that we can grow some of our own local food, and we can still have beautiful vistas that are unobstructed by high-rise buildings so that we can look at these beautiful mountains, that we have a river that we can fish in, we can recreate in, we can go to Brennan's Wave and watch those talented athletes surfing on a wave, or we can go take our paddleboard and go down a peaceful stretch of water. Those things are, I think, what will carry this community into the future more so than building more infrastructure, because it really is the land that brought people here in the first place. And the land will be here when we're gone.
Wow. What advice would you share with whoever's listening if they're planning on coming to visit Missoula for the first time?
And that's a very difficult question. Don't change it. Embrace it, love it, become part of it, and try not to change it unless it's for the better.
Shane, thank you so much for your time and energy and everything that you do for this community and the lands that surround us.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. It's been a joy to talk with you today.
You too.
Yeah.
Let's end your show with a song. So what song would you like to share with whoever's listening out?
Well, I've written many songs over the years, and I tried, as a songwriter, I was trying to sell songs to other people, and let alone trying to, become famous myself. But I would try to write these top 40 songs, whether country or rock and roll. But my favorite song that really kind of encompasses a lot of things we were talking about is really kind of a ballad. It's called Montana Matters, and it's about Montana's wild things, its wild places, but it's also about its people. So the verse will talk about bison and fish and ponderosa pine, and then it'll talk about a logger, it'll talk about a Native American, or it'll talk about Montana matters to me. And I got to sing that to our legislature at a time when they were having there's always a lot of contention in politics, but they were fighting about all kinds of stuff. And I got to sing to both bodies. And before I sang the song, I asked them if they could, for a moment, just listen to this 2.5 minute song and then sit down and try to concentrate more on what we have in common the love of this state than what we have to argue about. And I did get a standing ovation, but I think it's just because they were all being polite.
Montana matters to the grayling, the golden eagle, bison, and the lynx. Montana matters to the farmer that toils away to grow his crop of wheat. And Montana matters to me. Montana matters to the rancher, tends his livestock for the world to eat. Montana matters to the fisherman and his quarry beneath the mountain stream. And Montana matters to me. I want to live where I feel like I am free. There's wilderness as far as I can see, where people work the land, they wave and shake hands. Montana matters to me. Montana matters to a logger whose livelihood it grows upon a tree. Montana matters to the Blackfeet, Sailors, Kootenai, Cheyenne, and the Cree. And Montana matters to me. Montana matters to the sportsman, all the wildlife, every bird and bee. Montana matters to the alder, the ponderosa pine, and the bitterroot in the spring. And Montana matters to me. I want to live where I feel that I am free, and there's wilderness as far as I can see, where people work the land, they wave and shake hands. Montana matters to me. I'm glad I live where I feel that I am free, and there's wilderness as far as I can see. People work with their hands, they take care of the land. Montana matters, oh Montana matters, oh Montana matters to me.
Oki Nixuquax. Hello, my friends and relatives. This is Leilani Upham. I'm a board member with the Montana Wildlife Federation, the oldest conservation organization in Montana, dating back to 1936. Since our start, we've joined with landowners and others to address the loss of wildlife resources, healthy habitat, and public access. This week, I want to share a conservation tip, and that is to utilize your own bags when going grocery shopping or shopping to eliminate the plastic in our environment, which has caused the death and suffocation of so many wildlife in the past. By taking these steps, we can ensure that Montana's wildlife thrives for generations to come. For more information and to become a member of Montana Wildlife Federation, visit montanawildlife.org. That's montanawildlife.org.
That's it for this week's adventure, my friends in Missoula and around the world. But until next week, please remember, conservation is not a spectator sport. Living in Missoula is a privilege. With privilege comes responsibility. Please get educated, and engaged. Speak up on behalf of wildlife and wild places. And if you think you're too small to make a difference, well, then you've never spent the night with a mosquito.